7 years is an insurmountably long period of time. In a rapidly growing world with ongoing development, interests are bound to change at a rapid pace. But what if I told you that an indie mobile game would go 7 years without an update? How do you think the game would fare as a result? Probably not well, I would guess. But what if I told you that that same indie mobile game would go 7 years without an update, and hit all-time peak numbers over half a decade after the game's last breath of fresh content? Sounds impossible, right? Well, today, we're gonna break all common sense and dive into the unexpected twists and turns that have turned Geometry Dash, a then clone of the Impossible game, into one of the best mobile games of all time, even to this day. Now, in order to understand how the game survived all this time with nothing, we need to go back to the times where the community did see new additions to see what set up this game for a content hibernation. Geometry Dash at our first glance looks nothing more than a clone of the Impossible game, like I already mentioned. But in order to move out of that category into unique game, you need that spin that makes the game feel like its own. That spin for Geometry Dash comes from mainly two areas of the game. The first being the new vehicles that change how the game is played, so instead of just boring jumping over and over again, you can take things to the stars with the ship game mode, traverse gravity with the ball and spider, and even control your own jumps with the robot game mode. And that's not to mention every other new mechanic that has been introduced that takes this game to the next level. These new features have been introduced constantly with each major update, and there's been 12 of them in total, with version 2.2 being the game's present version. Although up until a couple weeks ago, it was only 11 updates, with update 2.1 being released in January 2017, and serving as the game's primary version for over half of the game's lifespan. The second, and much larger spin, is the game's level editor, which, dare I say, may be one of the strongest level editors in all of gaming. You wouldn't think that a game that started off from blocks and spikes would give birth to so much freedom of expression. I mean, look at this, we got fucking Mario Kart in this game now, dude, what is this? I could go on and on and on about the possibilities of the level editor. Every year, we think that we've reached our limits on what can be built, and every year, our expectations have been shattered in multiple ways as a matter of fact. But you know what else would shatter expectations? Pressing the subscribe button on this video. If you've enjoyed what you're watching so far, why not do it? Listen, all it takes is just a few seconds. I've essentially just pitched Geometry Dash as an art expression for the past 30 seconds, but obviously, this is a game that we're talking about, and games are meant to be played, not watched. Personally, I think a competitive player scene is just as important as level creators, though both have their respective roles in the community. So to answer the question of how Geometry Dash has lasted 7 years without an update, it goes something like this. Creators repeatedly push the boundaries of the editor to the point where these levels rack up millions of views online, keeping the game on the face of the earth, to say the least. Let's say we get a really hard level that's been finished. Well, we see that this level is impossible to the average player, and most of the hardest levels focus more on their gameplay rather than decoration. So how do these make it mainstream? Obviously, it's the process of beating them. The top player scene in Geometry Dash is very diverse, and while there's usually an undisputed top player, there's several players who fight tooth and nail to climb the ranks to the best of their abilities. Engaging in the process of verification, or in other words, proving that a level is possible, is one of the most exciting things that can happen to any player.
I verified it! I verified it! I verified it! I verified it!
There's a magical cycle between creators and players who take the unlimited possibilities gifted by the game's level editor to the point where there's never going to be a lack of content. In other words, the community is self-ran and self-dependent. There comes a point where levels themselves can be seen as updates. Showcases or completions of levels themselves can generate millions of views in a matter of weeks, introducing potentially thousands of new gamers to the world of Geometry Dash. Take a level called Bloodlust for an example. In what is now known as one of the most famous extreme demons of all time, the level would be in the process of verification for over a year, with the player Nobleboy having a tragic death at 98% that is now coded in infamy.
Dude, what the fuck? Really?
But we wouldn't see any progress on the level for 8 months, and in that time, we got very little on Update 2.2's release, and at this point, it seemed like the game was going to die for good. Matt made a great video on this, so I'll just summarize the next turn of events. Bloodlust finally getting beaten in February 2018, and giving the game a new top 1, or in other words, hardest level in the entire game, gave the game the much needed attention that it finally needed. And without this, the community could have wavered off into nothing as a result. Whenever a huge milestone is set in any game, it's almost certainly going to break out of the community that it originated from. Nobleboy's Bloodlust completion would earn millions of views in the first year that it was uploaded, and today currently sits at over 10 million views, serving as the second most viewed level verification of all time. In such a time where the community was forced to fend for themselves, the only thing that we could really do was push what we had to their absolute limits. While the playing scene certainly had a lot of action over the years, creators were still kept engaged with contests that were pushed out by the moderators of the game. In Geometry Dash, there's a feature known as Gauntlets, where the player is tasked with completing 5 levels in succession in order to receive a bonus reward and an achievement. There are a lot of these in the game, and over the course of Update 2.1, There would be contests held for creators that could give them the chance to have their own levels featured in these gauntlets. Once your level is in a gauntlet, it's essentially a part of the main game, so in order to make it in, your level has to be the best of the best, and the levels that were created for these contests are absolutely mind-blowing. But new gauntlets wouldn't be released for the entire update. As a matter of fact, after 2018, there were no new gauntlets released in the game, so even though there were some releases in that span, they only covered a mere fraction of the total update time. That takes us to 2019, where the community was now 2 years into update 2.1, without a whole lot of information on when the update would be released. It seems RobTop himself may not have had the best idea either, so in order to buy time, he decided to go on a massive rate wave and give hundreds of levels the recognition that they deserved. A level that gets rated is essentially endorsed by RobTop himself, so having a level that earns the player's stars is such a huge accomplishment, as only a few thousand players have such a title out of hundreds of millions who have downloaded the game. By giving more creators the recognition that they worked for in the editor, it gave the creating community much more of a reason to keep building levels and learning new mechanics, as the chances that their level would be recognized were now much higher. This also doubled with the hard levels as well, as extremely hard levels going unrated are not only a detriment to the creator, but also the player who took time out of their life to complete the level. This new rate wave also gave more players the motivation to go out there and throw their hats into the ring of level verifications, creating an even more enticing playing scene than before. This would create a very active 2019 for difficulty growth, with Zodiac taking the throne away from Bloodlust and becoming the new hardest demon in the entire game. To this day, Zodiac is considered by many to be the best top 1 that the game has ever had. It had a lot of things going for it, from an exciting race to be the first to beat it, to an iconic song and excellent decoration even today. Zodiac had become the new king of Geometry Dash, but every king needs its queen. In the final days of the year, a growing player with great reactions by the name of Nepesta would verify Kinos in what is now known as one of the biggest memes that the game has ever seen. But the meme can't take away the fact that the level is stupidly hard. While it didn't quite beat Zodiac in difficulty, it stuck right behind it at number 2 and wouldn't leave its side. Ever. Seriously, even 4 years later, and they're still right next to each other on the demon list. How adorable. But the nature of the completion would prove to benefit both the level and the game as a whole. The day that Kinos was beaten, December 14th, 2019, will go down as one of the craziest days in the game's history. Not only would Kinos be verified, but an exclusive Geometry Dash animation named Prelude, along with the 2.1 awards, would both premiere on this day. At this point, it really seemed like update 2.2 was near. I mean, they released the 2.1 awards, meaning it has to be close, right? Well, it would take another 4 years after this. As more and more time went by, it really seemed like false hope had consumed us once again. There wasn't really any news about the update's release, apart from the occasional messages from RobTop in the GD Discord server. News was few and far between, so all we could really do at this point was keep waiting. And that takes us to the COVID ages. It's been nearly 3 years since everything went crazy, but for Geometry Dash, the pandemic may have been the saving grace that kept the game moving again. Since nobody was going to school, there was more time to play games at home. As a result, the community, even if it may not have grown in size much, became much more tightly knit and became more of a family during these hard months. But since everyone was at home instead, there was plenty of time for creators and players to do their things. As a result, levels were the best that they've ever been, and players once again pushed the limits of what is possible, with 2 new top 1s in 2020. At this point, you can really start to see the cycle that the community has found itself in. Going back and forth between creator and player evolution is how the game was able to stay above the waters for the first 4 years of the update. That cycle continued on into 2021. While RobTop was able to open up to the community more about update progression this year, there still wasn't an expected release anytime in the near future, so everyone did what they had to do. Levels got more insane, the players got even better, and this whole cycle continued once again. But then, on the 8th anniversary of Geometry Dash, and over 4 years after the last major update, we finally got the first sneak peek of 2.2. It was only a minute and a half long, but for the community, this was a huge boost in morale. There was actually a more than 2% chance that the update would release somewhat soon, we all thought. Unfortunately, all was quiet for the rest of 2021 from RobTop's end, so it was back to the cycle. Slaughterhouse was verified, pushing the human limit of difficulty once again, and we got even more crazy levels. I don't really have to go too in-depth in 2022, I'm sure you can guess what will happen by now, so let's just fast forward to the 9th anniversary, over 5 years since update 2.1. Our reward for making it this far was a second sneak peek. Although it didn't release on the anniversary, it came a few weeks later, and let's just say it had a mixed reception. At least we finally got the Explorers preview after over 5 years. Quick, something to make this transition less awkward. 2023, the 10th year of Geometry Dash's existence. Many had suspected at this point that the new update would release on the 10th anniversary of the game, being August 13th, and for a while, it seemed like that was actually a very real possibility. While in the past, RobTop was always pretty vague about development progress, he would send this message in the Discord server that changed our whole perspective of the road ahead. Just one video, then the next step is releasing the update, he claims. Though at this point, we didn't know what to expect or when to expect that video in the first place. After all, the community is 6 years into an update, so anything could be on the table. RobTop would constantly post videos in the GD Discord server, but we wouldn't get this quote-unquote video that he hinted on for a little bit. But on May 15th, 2023, the final push for Update 2.2 was officially underway. The video was released by surprise, and it's a third sneak peek showing off the new platformer mode, along with the introduction of sound effects. But after the conclusion of this video, the next step was supposedly releasing the update. But this time, it seriously looked promising that it would release within a reasonable time. Google Play had made an announcement that they would be removing unupdated games off of their Play Store on August 31st, 2023, and Geometry Dash was in that threshold, ready to be removed from the Play Store in just a matter of months, if the update were to not be released in that time. Or that's what RobTop had thought. 10 days before the third sneak peek was released, Geometry Dash would be removed from the Play Store, to the surprise of even RobTop himself. Without access to the 2.1 code, RobTop would have to finish the update in order to restore the game to the Play Store. People had begun to put the dots together. August 31st was the deadline, and the 10-year anniversary is August 13th, a few weeks before the planned removal. Was RobTop planning to release 2.2 on the 10-year anniversary? Was a question that so many people, including myself, were asking. But unfortunately, the only way that we could find out was to wait for the day of the anniversary to come once again. It was a very hyped up anniversary, nothing like we had seen for the 8 or 9 year anniversaries. Everyone was suspecting that something big was coming in the video, and we wouldn't be disappointed in the end. The 10-year anniversary video, also known as GD10, featured a montage, interviews from prominent community members, another animation, and some awards and statistics that lightened up the atmosphere. But suddenly, the entire community was thrown a bone that would change the entire game forever. After 6.5 years, the community had finally gotten a release date for the update. To say that it was pandemonium would be a massive understatement. Nobody could keep themselves calm anymore. Pure bliss and adrenaline took over the minds of everyone. Many people, including myself, were around for the entirety of the wait for this moment. After over 6 years, we could finally take a deep breath and wait just a little bit longer to fully enter a new era of this game that has made up our childhoods. But not everything would be sunshine and rainbows come October. Within the first week of the month, RobTop would announce that Explorers, the level shown in the second sneak peek, would be delayed into the next update, most likely to prioritize other moving parts and get the update stable. But a week later, RobTop would upgrade the game's servers in preparation for the release of the update. This was talked about for a long time, so seeing it happen on October 12th made it seem possible that the update could be released within the last week of October, but just a week later, everything would take a turn for the worst. RobTop would communicate progress updates once again through the Discord, stating that there is a possibility that the update would have to be delayed to November, after promising an October release in the 10-year anniversary video. This message caused mixed emotions from the community, with some understanding of RobTop's position, while others bashing him for yet another failed promise. Nevertheless, your stance ultimately wouldn't matter in the end, as just 2 days later, RobTop officially delayed Update 2.2 to November. We weren't done waiting just yet. In fact, it would be a very long and painful November, as RobTop would go radio silent everywhere for a span of 2 weeks, until on November 26th, RobTop would make a tweet awakening from his hibernation. The tweet stated that Update 2.2 was about to be completely ready for release, but review times would jeopardize the November release, which was understandable given that there were only 4 days left in the month. Ultimately, it would be pushed back into December, and the waiting game kept going on. It also didn't help that RobTop would once again move into a hibernation state, with the only communication to the outside world being the constant updates to the game's beta branch on Steam, with each update to this branch signaling that changes to the update were still being made. These beta updates would continue through the first half of December, but on December 19th, we finally received some news that wasn't a beta update. The game had been submitted to be reviewed by Steam, Apple, and Google Play. Hours later, the update would be approved by both Apple and Steam, leaving Google Play as the last man standing. Just one final step, and we're home free. Even at this stage, the beta branch would be updated, with 3 updates happening over the span of a couple of hours. Nobody really understood a thing that was happening at this point. Everything that we'd been looking forward to for almost 7 years, from the swing copter, to platformer mode, to the new editor features, to the new gauntlets, to the new physics, we all just wanted this nightmare to end. We were all exhausted, stressed, and ready to hear the announcement that everything would be okay, and we wouldn't have to worry. On December 20th, 2023, at 1:27 a.m. UTC, the wait was officially over. Thanks to a self-ran community of tens of thousands of members, including dedicated creators, talented players, and content creators never failing to entertain us in the meantime, we were able to keep the game alive for over half of the game's entire lifespan with no updates whatsoever. The active player base has hit record numbers as a result, and who knows what the future will hold for this simple platformer game. From seemingly having all hope lost in 2018, to the countless sleepless nights in anticipation for any news whatsoever, Geometry Dash officially survived the biggest challenge it faced. No matter how big or small a game is, or how often it receives new content, a self-governing community will never let their game die. If an indie game can survive a 7-year wait time entirely on its own, then you can be sure that the game has been special to the player base it found. After 10 years of memories, a new update has been released that will allow us to create many more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.